Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. We are here with my friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. Also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. And for this episode, we are back to Zoom because it is a bit of an impromptu episode. Full disclosure, last week we recorded a full episode of the show. It took us a bit to get out, and in the interim, the NBA boycotted games, for social justice after the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And also Chadwick Boseman died tragically. Very, very, very sad. Such an incredibly sad story. But because those things happened between when we did our recording and then putting out the episode, it just felt weird to put that out. But because there's lots of good stuff in that episode that is a bit evergreen and timeless, we're going to release that as a bonus pod. So we're going to give you this episode today where we talk about a bunch of things. And then later in the week, you're going to get sort of a condensed version of the episode that we recorded before all the events of last week. So that being said, fellas, how's it going? I hate that we're not in the backyard, but we're doing this because we sort of decided to do this yesterday, and it's harder to get together last minute.
I mean, you guys have real jobs too, so, and it's, what time is it? It's 10 a.m. on a Monday morning, so thank you guys for sneaking out.
Yeah, I'm a little sleepy today. Lou had a night terror last night, so that's why I'm in a house robe. I'm trying to stay kind of in sleepy mode, so I'm going to try to take a nap at some point in the day, which I never do, but I got maybe 2 hours sleep.
I thought you were going to say at some point in the podcast, you were going to try and take a nap at some point during this episode. Yeah, before we sort of get to events too, Max, big weekend. Congrats. You did you had a big Budweiser stage show that aired on national television here in Canada.
Yeah, we always like to have a bit of a 1-2 punch when we put out anything. And it was exciting to release Campfire Chords, and we got to perform with the hockey season kicking off on national television, which felt like a big win for us. But the second thing we had in our back pocket was this Campfire Chord special that actually, shout out to our friend Adam Burchell and your brother, Greg Veerman, who are both a part of the behind the scenes stuff to make it all work. But it was funny. We spent a lot of the late July into August prepping for this shoot. It was filmed at our buddy Beez's off the grid farm, and we did a full day shoot. We were around a campfire and in a meadow and at outside of a yurt. And it was really fun to make and actually play with each other. We've been saying no to basically every idea that we don't like right now as it pertains to the music industry, specifically drive-in shows, because we're really trying not to play in front of a bunch of cars in a parking lot. Also, like Zoom calls where like the band is in like 5 different screens and we're all performing together. We're trying not to do that. But this felt really good because it was going to be an hour of national television, totally on our own terms. And we got to use our crew. So huge shout out to Corey and his team for filming it. And it felt like kind of a collective moment. Did you guys tune in?
No, I did not. I wish I had a good excuse, but I didn't even know when it was on. I kind of found out after the fact, or I don't even know. I was seeing it following it along on Instagram.
Well, that's how you find out when it is. You follow our Instagram, and we posted about it about 1,000 times.
I felt like it was already up though when I saw it.
Oh, okay. I'm
not super proactive on Instagram or like good with dates and stuff. It needs to be shoved down my throat.
That's what
it looked good.
You know what's funny? That's what we were trying to do, is shove it down people's throats. Like the amount of time, I think a lot of people that follow us were exhausted by the amount of posts that we had about this show. Only because we need to remind people like you, and clearly it didn't even work on you.
Well, I find all my friends are out of my algorithm. Sometimes I'll be like, is Sean Dawson okay? I'm like, I haven't seen him. And then I'll have to search out Sean. Sometimes I'll have to search out Arkel. Sometimes I'll look up Mike. I'll be like, I haven't liked his last 3 posts. And then I'll have to go back and like midnight tap them. So it was a case of me kind of learning about it seemingly after it aired, because I was following a story of a wedding that was watching it. And I was like, oh, I want to see this. But it seemed like it had already happened.
I think that it helps the story that Shane missed your show, that he's also in a house robe right now. Like, it just seems like he's sort of just floating through his days effortlessly, not on no timeline.
When you have 2 kids, time is different.
Time does move different.
Yeah, so you have a better get out of jail free card type of excuse.
Max doesn't seem convinced. He seems still a little bit.
Well, he doesn't know yet.
Didn't.
In like 20 years, when he has a kid, he might know.
I caught a bunch of it, Max, between that and some hoops. And Danica watched the whole thing, and she loved it. Ooh. She literally was going on about how amazing it was. Like, basically, she was like, it was just nice to hang out on that farm. She like said that she had a real sense of like, it was just really beautiful to look at, as well as the songs and all that. So you had a big win with her.
I was just gonna say, Danica doesn't pull any punches. She's like a real critic, and I know you respect her opinion, as do I. So that's high praise.
But it's not like a live show, right? So you can just send me the link. I can still watch it.
Like I mean, I'll send you the Dropbox link. It's fine. Yeah, I'll do that.
Because I do want to see it. Do that. Yeah.
Yeah. One kind of funny realization Ash and I had yesterday, after all was said and done, was for the last 2 summers, like so 2019 and 2018. The last 2 weeks of August are always kind of painful for us because nobody in the music industry lifts a fucking finger. Everyone's so fucking lazy and on vacation. And so we're out on our walks scheming, thinking about the next thing we want to do. And no one is responding to our emails. And we get really angry about it. But this year, the last 2 weeks of August were some of our busiest times of the whole year because we were preparing for this special. And so we were saying, like, if 2019 us could tell the future us that, hey, 2020, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is the last 2 months of August are actually going to be the busiest months of the year. I'd be like, amazing. What's the bad news? The bad news is you're not doing anything else for the whole year.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll take the wins where we can get them. But yeah, it was very fun to work on the show. And it really did feel like a family affair because we got to work with our producing crew, your brother, shout out to the Nut. And it was awesome. And of course, Ashley did 96% of the work. So that was good.
And the pressure's kind of all off because it's pre-recorded. So you get the excitement of a show without the nervousness of something could go wrong because you know it's great, right?
Yeah, of course. You can just do another take if you screw up. It's good.
So, guys, the reason that we are recording sort of this impromptu pod is because a lot went on over the last sort of week. Let's start with the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks boycotted their playoff game with the Orlando Magic. They didn't come out of the locker room, and nobody sort of knew what was going on. It seems like they didn't have it planned. It was just a very visceral reaction to the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha. Which is obviously the same state that the Milwaukee Bucks play in. So that had sort of this cascading effect where the other NBA teams canceled their games. Then you saw in the MLB in baseball, they canceled a bunch of games. The NHL eventually sort of canceled games. So it kind of like brought the sports world to a grinding halt and showed sort of the power of protest or strike or sort of like a collective action. But there was like a precarious sort of like 24 hours there where people thought maybe the NBA season was done. What did you guys think when that started going down? Were you guys watching live as it sort of happened? Because I was I had the game on or I was about to watch it, and The Jump, which is the basketball show with Rachel Nichols that airs before it, she sort of announced on air, like to Zach Lowe and Kendrick Perkins, like that the Bucks weren't coming out of their locker room. So it was like, I kind of was like in real time being like, oh my goodness. And then we had to go get Win from daycare. So I was like, kind of like, I put it on the Vibe on my phone. And I just sort of was following the story. It was pretty wild. Well, what about you guys? Shane, where were you when you heard?
I had heard rumblings of it the day before. I think Fred was talking about it, and maybe Norm had mentioned it. And I thought, oh, this is definitely going to happen. Because once it starts percolating after a day, the team's going to want to make a statement. And I figured, they'll probably boycott a game or two and come back because they don't want to be punished for something that, maybe they didn't do. Like Draymond Green did a post that you kind of shared where it's like, why should the NBA take it off and forego all their earnings when like they should be the last people punished for this racism? And I think the statement of boycotting 1 or 2 games really was effective, and it wasn't really necessary to prolong it any further than that.
Yeah, I actually thought it was interesting because it was more chaotic than anything ever is when it comes to professional sports. Even though the league is flying by the seat of its pants a little bit in the bubble and like everything is sort of precarious in 2020, the fact that the other team didn't know they were going to do it, I thought that was shocking. And then you hear reports later that LeBron was really pissed off kind of at the Milwaukee Bucks for saying, guys, we're supposed to be unified in this effort together, and you didn't tell anybody. And I thought that was really interesting, and I kind of loved it because there's not that many moments of spontaneity, especially when it comes to like large like business culture or corporate culture, which the NBA is to a certain degree. And I like that it was sort of like a renegade strike where it's just like, okay, we're not, you know what, like we're just not going to go out and we're not going to tell anybody, and we're going to figure it out as we go. And this isn't going to be, because I find sometimes when it comes to protest, especially when it comes to big business, it feels a little too calculated, or just a little too like, it's kind of sterile sometimes when it comes to these moments of protest. And I love that the players like have been taking a knee for the national anthem. But that obviously wasn't a spontaneous thing. That was like a decided, you know, days before, this is what we're going to do. But I just really appreciate the Milwaukee Bucks said, like, we just can't go out in good conscience. And I couldn't tell you that that's how I was going to feel 10 minutes before the game started, but that's how I feel right now. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's much better being spontaneous, because otherwise they would just call it the games were postponed. And they started doing that like 2 hours into it. They started saying, oh, the games are postponed, to try to do like some PR for it. And then LeBron was like, not postponed, boycotted, to clarify that. So I think the shock element really helped make it more of a sensational story, which got more traction. What were your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful, and it felt like you guys said, like this sort of genuine sort of in the moment. It's like, because guys were warming up. Like I think a lot of the guys on the Bucks thought they were playing, and then it's like they got in the locker room before they came out, and I guess guys started being like talking about it. Because like you said, Shane, the Raptors and the Celtics the day before in their media availabilities were talking about doing something for their Thursday game. And so like a lot of things, like one, the fact that it was the Bucks, the fact that they were the first game of the day, the fact that, you know, they play in that state where the incident took place. And it just felt very sort of like, like an authentic, visceral reaction to something that these guys, that really sort of like, you know, touches these guys and something that they're passionate about. And to your guys' point, I think it was incredibly effective. They basically stopped sports across like the spectrum in North America for like 48 hours, you know, and that's a lot of power. And that sort of, it does show, you know, because there's this whole like argument, like it's like, well, you know, like where does the power lie? Is it in the owners? Well, they pay the salaries, you know, but without the players, the owners can't earn the money, you know, because the players are the unique talent that generate the revenue and all that stuff. And it was just a very fascinating sort of like exercise in the players willing to potentially give up something, you know, like their pay or whatever it is that they'd be giving up, legacy. Like if they canceled the playoffs, you know, like that means a lot to some guys. Like they're playing legacy. It means Bron doesn't get to go for another championship. Like there was just so many things that could have sort of come out of it that would have hurt them. Like you said, Shane, in that Draymond Green post on Twitter, that it just, it was really sort of like eye-opening and very powerful. And I think it's good to have those sorts of things. And ultimately, I think the players needed to do it for themselves, for their mental health, for like their convictions. Like they needed to do something, and they couldn't just go back to, playoff game today. You know what I mean? They had to sort of like stop everything, make their stance clear, get real change happening. Like they're starting to open, you know, voting places in all these arenas in different American cities, and sort of actions that can be. Actually, speaking of that, did you read, Max, that LeBron called up Barack Obama?
No.
Yeah.
What did he say?
So in the midst of like when everything was very precarious, and it's like, are they going to leave the bubble? Are they shutting down the season? I guess LeBron and a couple other players got on a call with Barack Obama and asked him, like, what's the best way to go about this? And Obama was like, basically like, you need to come up with actionable change, like define what it is that you want, and then set those parameters, and basically sort of walked them through how to sort of deal with what they can say when they talk to the owners about what they're sort of asking for. And then like Obama tweeted, or he released a statement basically saying like, you know, they called, but it's putting all the praise back on the players for sort of taking the action.
That's actually so great, because these players do have every smart person at their disposal. Like, do you know what I mean? And I feel like it's probably actually an underutilized thing. If I was LeBron, I'd be calling the Barack like once a week, being like, yo, give me some thoughts. Because as somebody who uses other people's expertise all the time, I feel like the NBA players could, you know, they have the reach there just to be able to, it's one phone call away to talk to anybody who's, you know, been in leadership positions before. You know, a couple of things. I I love they did this because history always smiles on these moments. Like there's no moments like when it comes to like standing up for social change where people go, nah, that was a bit of an overreach. Jesse Owens, why'd you put why John Carlos, who are the guys who put up the Black Power fist in the 1968 Olympics?
Yeah.
It's like those are iconic moments because it is the right thing to do. I can't really think of any example.
Muhammad Ali not going to fight in Vietnam. You know what I mean? And he loses like basically the prime of his boxing career. It's like.
But he is revered. He is known as Muhammad Ali for that reason, right? Because he stood up for what was right. I really love that. I also think that I wonder. It's like when you look back on the Clippers Golden State series when the Donald Sterling accusations came out, and for those who don't remember or don't know, Donald Sterling was the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers. Tapes came out revealing that he said the N-word and other racist things while he was owning a team mostly of black people. And even, by the way, even the term owning a team of black people just feels weird to say. But he was the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, and the NBA forced him to sell the team. And there was a decision to be made because it was the beginning of the playoffs. Should the Clippers boycott the game? And they didn't. They and of course that was their own decision, and they're grown men and smart guys in their own right. But looking back, I wonder how many of them go, we should have just not played. And I wonder, if this is going to become more of a regular occurrence when it comes to professional sports, because I do think there is real ways to make change. As you said, Mike, that all the NBA arenas are now being used as voting locations. I think with the exception of OKC, because they don't have the rights to do it in that arena for some reason.
Yeah, I think they have to own the arena. Like any arena that the NBA team owns, they can implement those changes.
And I think the Clippers, they turned their shirts inside out or something. They did make a statement.
They did, but that's how it feels kind of soft now.
Now it does, yeah. But I think, too, if other teams start boycotting in the future, it's going to seem way less impactful. It's the first time you do something. It's really that historic time. So at the time, LA doing that thing where they turn their jerseys inside out or whatever they did, their warm-up shirts, I think that was kind of impactful at the time. Now it doesn't seem that way.
Sure. I mean, I think at the time there's some people that were like, you could have boycotted the game. But anyway,
of course they were, but I'm just saying it was still impactful what they did.
Sure.
So nowadays, like if all the teams just turned their shirts inside out or did something where they sat out a quarter, it wouldn't have the same impact. That you have to keep anteing up with every new protest to really make an impact.
Mm-hmm. I think that LeBron and Chris Paul and all these guys are incredible leaders, and the way they're speaking on social change is really necessary, and they're just great role models for all of us. The next thing I'd like to see them do, and I'd be really curious to know how they go about this. Mike, you mentioned actionable change. What is the thing that's actually going to happen here? They have access to power. They're obviously very wealthy people, and they have a lot of sway in the culture. But the people, the shareholders in all these organizations are the 0.00001% elite that are one phone call away, probably from every state senator, every governor, from the president of the United States to the titans of business all around the world. And I would love to see players really dig in. I know it's an uncomfortable thing because it's like, this is, you'd be standing up to your boss and that's the person who pays the bills. But like, doesn't the Davos family in Betsy DeVos,
they own the Orlando Magic. Yeah.
Yeah. And she is and her family are Republicans, right?
She's the Secretary of Education, very controversial one as well. Yeah. I mean, they've had other social issues too, the DeVos family, because they're very religious as well. So there's certain LGBTQ issues with that family and their outlook.
I would just be really interested to see, like, if who's the star of the Orlando Magic? I can't even think.
Aaron Gordon.
Okay, if Aaron Gordon says, "Hey, listen, like, I'm not going to sign here. I'm going to go somewhere else if I see you donating money to Donald Trump." Like, I don't know, like, if that's fair. It feels fair to me, but I'd be interested to know how many of these players start going, I'm actually shocked and dismayed. We did some digging here and our ownership group has donated, this amount of money to the NRA or whatever it is. And because I think that's where they can really begin to make change, because they are rubbing shoulders with people that have a lot of money and influence when it comes to politics. And the NBA is one of the most popular products in America on a cultural level. And again, and this doesn't have to be a combative thing. It's just be like a matter of fact. Like I don't want to shop here if this person is anti-LGBTQ, or it would be the same thing. It's like, I don't want to work here if my owner, is exhibiting these practices that I fundamentally disagree with on a human rights level.
Absolutely. I mean, it always comes down to this too, though. Within any group, there's certain people that have more power. LeBron can decide to go wherever he wants, but if you're like, a mid-level player, it's like you'll just play anywhere. It's easier to make those demands if you're like sort of your value is so undeniable. But if you're sort of like a mid or lower rank player, it's a lot. Yeah. Even though to us, we're like, oh, that guy's still making $3 million a year. It's like that same thing where it's like, oh, that guy's being problematic or he's being difficult. Whereas if somebody that's like undeniably talented, like a LeBron James, like an irreplaceable player, those are the guys, like the leaders that can actually flex and sort of make those choices for themselves,
Yeah, if like every superstar kind of said, oh, I'm not going to play in Orlando, that would really matter because they wouldn't be able to have a winning team, because you need at least 2 or 3 now to have a winning team.
Yeah, it's totally true that like the power lies with the stars, because did you tell me, Mike, or that basically like the whole league was like, if LeBron's in, we're in. If LeBron's out, we're out.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like when there was a report before they decided to resume the playoffs that LeBron and the Lakers and Kawhi and the Clippers basically voted to not continue the season, and they walked out of the meeting, so that was like a huge report that came out that night before I went to bed. And then the next morning by like 11, I guess they cooled off a bit and calmed down. But a lot of the pundits were like, well, shit, if LeBron and Kawhi are out and the 2 LA teams are going home, like this thing's over. We're not continuing with the other teams. Like those are the 2 most famous teams in the bubble right now.
The other thing which makes the NBA unique and which I think gives it a lot of strength in this kind of movement is that the NFL, it feels like 90% of the roster is replaceable. It's just like they can kind of carry on. Guys get injured so quickly. Their careers are so short in professional football that if a couple of people made a stand and said, I don't want to play, they'd be like, okay, we'll just get somebody else to do it.
Not only that, but they have unguaranteed contracts. So if a player gets injured and he's got like a 3-year deal, they just cut him and they don't have to pay the other 2 years. Like NBA players' deals are guaranteed. So they would absolutely, and the culture of the NFL really has defined lines between owner and player. And sort of, I feel like if the players, tried to unify, unless it was like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers got together and were like, yo, we're doing this, they would basically just replace the whole teams, and not think twice about it.
Yeah, and the quarterback's considered the most important player, and 70% of the quarterbacks are white.
Yeah.
Do you think that what the NBA is doing is going to inspire like the NHL or Major League Baseball and their athletes to be more socially conscious and to take stands more often? Or do you think this is just going to stick to basketball?
No, it has. I think it has. Like the fact that like NHL players, because the NHL didn't shut down their games. They actually were like, we'll take a moment of silence or something. And then their players collectively got together and were like, yo, like, no, we're sitting out some games. And then the league finally, like 2 days later, shut down for a night, I think. I'm not 100% sure. But that is like young, progressive players, in a league that is largely white. And maybe, the other thing too is we always discount, like, because you have a Muhammad Ali or LeBron James who are socially conscious, for the most part, these are guys in their early 20s, like that don't, like, it's not that they don't care, but they just don't want to think about it. Like, what did you think? I mean, I think we all sort of think about these things just because of the way our personalities are. So like, although we maybe thought about them when our early 20s, I certainly didn't think about it a lot. And if I was a professional athlete that basically spent my whole life either putting a puck in a net or a ball in a net or whatever it is, it's like, it's hard to then flip a switch and like educate yourself, have an opinion, be able to express that opinion in a way that you feel comfortable doing. Like, it's just a lot to ask. So I think it's pretty impressive that, over the course of, basically since George Floyd, everybody has thought about this. It's ever present. And like athletes, these guys in their early 20s who normally aren't thinking about anything other than being good at their sport and, playing video games, are now all like becoming sort of like mild activists. So I do think that the NBA is like sort of like inspired. The question is, does it continue over the long haul?
Well, I think a lot of the players too have thought about it over the course of their lives because they've been forced to think about it, right? When they were growing up. And I think that was a huge motivating force to make it, was to get out of the places they were from.
I was talking more about the white hockey players.
Right.
Max
Yes.
was saying if it's going to the other thing, like, they're sort of like typical white North American experience in the suburbs playing hockey. poor people don't play hockey. It's an expensive sport. You know what I mean? So it's
well, they've probably experienced it or been a part of it on the other side of the fence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. And so it's like getting them thinking about those things, and all of us thinking about those things, our unconscious biases, things that we say that make anybody feel uncomfortable. I mean, everybody's just so much more consciously trying to be aware now. Whereas in the past, people just kind of like were kind of ignorantly going through life, you know, not even in like a way that was like intentionally negative. It's just you don't know what you don't know. And now it's like we all are very, very, very aware. Any other thoughts on the NBA shutting down, fellas?
I was just wondering how you felt about it coming back. Like, were you like, yes, or were you like, oh, I wish they would have made that like supreme statement?
It's so funny you asked that. My brother actually asked me that this weekend too. So it was like when they made when the Bucks didn't come out of the locker room, and then I'm like, I got that feeling like that sort of like, I was very like fired up and sort of engaged. I was like, this is awesome that they're taking the stand. But then my brain started playing the chess with it, and I started going, oh man, I'm like, what's the next step? There's this step, there's this step. I'm like, shit, like this might be it. Like this season might be done and basketball will go away. And so then I had this conflicting feeling where I'm like, you know, I love that they're taking this stand, but then I'm like, oh, but basketball is going to be gone. And it's like become this thing that I was saying, like, since the pandemic started, we don't have things to look forward to anymore. Like we don't have like little markers like, oh, we're going to go to Mexico in February, or, oh, Max is having a birthday party, or, you know, you just have little things that were always like once or twice a month that you kind of like just look forward to. They get you through a day. And I don't think I realized, like, I love that basketball was back, but I don't think I realized how much I was looking forward to the game of the night that I was going to watch or something. So it became like this little marker that I had. And when they were going to, like, I thought maybe potentially shut down the season and we might not have basketball for another year, depending on how the bargaining agreement goes, I got immensely depressed because I was like, why is this hitting me so hard? I'm like, oh, it's because like all those things, I was looking forward to the Raptors playing Thursday night and then Saturday. And like, I had all my little like plans that get you excited, and they were gone. And then I was like, one, this isn't about you, Mikey. Two, it's like, this is the point. Like the reason they're doing it is because it is this big like pacifier. It's this giant distraction. And it's like, the more you're sort of, you have these little entertaining things, and then I can go back to like my life. It's like, you know, for, you know, Black people and social injustice, it's like, it's this ever present thing that they're always dealing with. And it's like, their fear is like, oh, we're going to start playing games again, and everyone's going to get distracted and stop thinking about the stuff that really matters, you know? And it's finding the line between how can you feel comfortable sort of like with your creature, you know, your comforts and what is entertainment. And then also it's like, is it at the expense of like these guys, like in their mental health? And I know they're making a lot of money and all that, but I'm like, I just was like, the whole thing just made me really like, I felt guilty for being like, sad that it was over, but also I was excited that they were making this stand. So it was a huge mashup of emotions, but ultimately I was very depressed when I thought it was going to go away. And like, you know, I use that word very flippantly right now, but like I was like in a funk. And Danica's like, man, like you're really like kind of taking this hard. I'm like, well, it's like it became this thing that I was going to have until October. And then so when Woj tweeted that the players have agreed to continue the playoffs, I definitely like I went, yes. Like I actually audibly said that as I saw the tweet come up on my phone. But yeah, so it was the whole confluence of emotions that I felt. What about you, Shaney?
Well, after you sent the Draymond Green post where he was, because there was someone commented on his Instagram account and it said basketball can wait. And Draymond basically clapped back and he's like, why can basketball wait? Why can you do your job? But why do we have to not work and make money and provide for our families? And it's like, why are we disposable? And basically your job isn't. Your job's important, but mine isn't. Anyway, that really helped me reconcile my feelings of excitement when it came back. Like I still would have felt all the excitement, but I would have felt more guilt about being excited. You know what I mean? Emotions are hard to control, even if you intellectually know you're supposed to process them. But I definitely was excited, and I didn't realize how important these basketball playoffs actually were in my life. Like I got Luka sanity, or whatever you call it. Like when Luka hit that shot, I've never been more into the NBA. Maybe when Kawhi hit that big 4-bounce rim shot, like, you know, so I was really into that Dallas series. I was super into the Portland series. And like you said, I was, when they took the thing you love away, it really made the statement so powerful. And then when it came back, it really made you appreciate it all the more. And I was excited. What about you, Max?
Yeah, I don't think everything in life can be a win-win, especially when you're marching for social justice. But I will say that I think this is actually a real opportunity to have a win-win here. It gives like entertainment to basketball fans around the world, but also look what happened last night. Jamal Murray, Canadian, scores 50 points.
That was amazing.
And he's on his shoes. He's wearing, drawings of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. In the post-game interview, he says, "I wear these as a symbol for, social injustice everywhere." He's crying. He put that conversation right back to the top of my Twitter feed. Right back to the top of my mind. And I think if the NBA goes away and these players are just sort of, on social media and sort of participating in the conversation, but only sort of online, it's not as effective. I think the players have an opportunity, especially if they get inventive about it, to make it a conversation every single day. And as you said, like every time Fred VanVleet or Norm or any of these guys do a press conference, like on an off day, and they're talking about these issues, it hits me every single time. And it's because I look up to these guys and because I love the Toronto Raptors and I love the NBA. And I think it's actually like the next month and a half or 2 months is going to be really interesting to see how these guys keep this conversation going, because they do have an opportunity to really stir the pot in an effective way, much more so, I'd argue, than if they all went home. I think their opportunity for creating change and pushing the owners to do the right thing and getting NBA fans and other professional sports athletes to do the right thing, much more if they just went home. Because I think if they go home, the NHL guys can kind of go back to their business and not be thinking about this. But I think every time the NBA guys kick up a storm, it really, really, really forces the NHL guys to go, oh, fuck. Okay. I love Russell Westbrook. Okay. What's he talking about now? Okay. I guess I got to take this seriously. Because I know Austin Matthews loves Russell Westbrook. He tries to dress like him. He loves his personal flair and his style.
Wait,
and
is this a joke? Does he really?
He does. He's talked about this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And Nathan McKinnon on the Star on the Avalanche. He loves hip hop. He sings along to every word. And I'd love to see both those guys actually say something of political consequence.
Yeah, it's that whole you're influenced by the culture. It's like stick up for it or say something for it. You can't take all the goods without and then just sort of ignore the more uncomfortable aspects of it. Okay, well, this is that kind of leads us to another incredibly sad story, and that's the passing of Chadwick Boseman. And it's just we'll sort of I guess talk about how we feel about it and how we heard. But I guess first I was actually sitting, I was on my couch and I was watching Bill and Ted Face the Music. I'd rented it because I was like, I'll watch Bill and Ted. I used to, and
is that a good movie?
I got 30 minutes in and then the news started breaking on Twitter, and at that point I was I couldn't just put my phone down and go back to Bill and Ted. So I stopped the movie and I was just kind of in shock. And I was just sort of scrolling, and then people were posting videos of him. I'm sure you guys saw the one where he was surprising people on Fallon when Black Panther first came out. Speeches he made during award season, really inspirational stuff. So I was just sort of very, very sort of sad about the whole thing. And as I was watching these clips that people were posting to Twitter, I was just getting very emotional. And so I was just really, really sort of bummed out, and mostly for the impact that he made on people and sort of what he represented and what Black Panther meant. I was just what a terrible year for sort of Black culture and sort of feeling good about yourself and all that stuff, to lose Kobe and then to lose Chadwick. It was all very, very shocking and just a lot. And you're just kind of watching it and you're contextualizing it. And then you're thinking about the person and, anyway, so that was my thought. Where were you guys when you sort of heard? Maxie, you want to start?
Yeah. I don't know where I was, but I was it was in the evening on my phone. And it's funny. I obviously know Chadwick Boseman, but I didn't really monitor his career that closely for what I know he's Black Panther, but in my mind, those were sort of an ensemble cast. And I saw the movie and I liked it. I never saw 42. So I don't think I fully understood the gravity of the situation until you started seeing the outpouring, every single person, every celebrity that I follow on social media was posting about him. And then you kind of go down the rabbit hole and you hear these personal anecdotes of the kind of guy he was. I find it though kind of hard when a celebrity passes, and it's just kind of you have to be in a particular mind state, I think, start reading all those beautiful eulogies. I know Ryan Coogler wrote something really nice, and Josh Gad had a story about him. And then you find out that Denzel Washington helped pay for his schooling. Did you hear that?
I did.
He anonymously paid for it, but secrets out.
And he, so I think I've gotten actually a lot more sad about it in the last when did he pass? What day was
Friday
it?
night?
Was it Friday? So, and today is Monday. I think in the last 24 hours, it really started to hit me more. And of course, I think what makes this one interesting, or at least unique, is that it's always sad when a celebrity passes, but the kind of passing is very different. And I can't recall a time where it was somebody that was this young passed away suddenly, but of a disease that he'd had for a long time. Is there any other examples like this? Like, that's why it really hits in it. And then you think about like, oh my goodness, it's like, he was working on all these movies while he was very sick with colon cancer. And I thought, like, how many people knew about this? And I guess Coogler didn't even know. Like, he kept it such a secret, which is such a unique way to live through cancer, because and I respect anybody who goes through it, who has to go through a type of illness like that. I respect any way you process it. But the fact that he didn't want to make it a part of his personal narrative, he didn't want to make it a part of his day-to-day conversations, and he just wanted to keep it about the work, I thought it was really interesting. So it's a lot to take in, because it's a lot different than most other celebrity deaths, which is like, sometimes a helicopter accident in the case of Kobe, or a car accident, or a drug overdose. But this is in its own category completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. I got the information kind of in the same way I got Kobe's information, where it was obviously I was not expecting Kobe to die at all. And then boom, Kobe's gone. And obviously cancer sucks, and fought cancer and all that. But one of the things that's actually helpful with cancer in terms of helping your loved ones cope is the fact that you can see the death coming and you have time to mentally prepare. So all the fans who loved him, it just hit them like a car crash or that helicopter crash that Kobe went through. So it does really amplify the shocked feeling you have. And I didn't know much about him. He seemed like one of those celebrities. He wasn't in the tabloids. His love life wasn't overly publicized. And then all you know about him afterwards is all these beautiful videos and speeches. Like, I watched a commencement speech he did for a college. And, like, even if he had still been with us and I watched some of the speeches and things he said, I probably would have shed a tear. But it's so exacerbated once you know he's gone and this seemingly wonderful, beautiful person is no longer with us. And knowing the impact he made with the movie Black Panther, like, just the fact that movie existed meant so much to so many. And I went down a rabbit hole. He did this video for a kid who was dying of cancer, a black kid. And yeah, so crazy. Like, and I didn't care about Chadwick at all before. I didn't know anything at all before. I never even thought about it. These things. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is it feels different, like Max said. It's not. This one feels different. He seemed different, and none of us, we don't know him, but it's like you can get a good read on people when you see them. In those moments, like Shane said. Even the sort of person that would record a video for a dying child, and sort of the way that he sort of like used his celebrity and his impact and the sort of way he inspired people was just, it just all felt different. And it's all, like Shane said, exasperated now that he's gone. So those clips are crazy. I mean, did you guys, one sort of light amongst all of the videos I was watching though is a lot of people have been posting Black Jeopardy with him as his character from Black Panther. Have you guys seen that? That's been making the round.
I watched that when he was on. Yeah. I can't remember all the details of it. Was there some funny parts?
What was it? What was the bit?
Well, the gag is like, so Black Jeopardy is, it's like, using like sort of like slang or like a certain outlook of like, the American black experience. And so you answer questions in like a way that is very abrasive. But the gag is that the character from Black Panther, I think T'Challa, I can't remember his name, but he's from Wakanda, so he doesn't really know any of the customs, right? So like he's kind of a bit lost amongst the game because he doesn't really know the slang, he doesn't really understand. And then they go through it a bunch of times, and then at the very end he's picked up sort of the slang. So it's like when Karen wants to bring her potato salad to the cookout, what do you say? And then he's like, I think I understand it now. And then he sort of like clarifies. Anyway, it's like very, very, very funny. And it's just like him with his Wakanda accent. Like everything about it is just like really, really funny. And it was like amongst a bunch of clips that make you sad, that SNL performance made you smile.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. One thought that I just had, Shane, because you said like the thing about cancer, it allows people to sort of process the death, and then when it finally happens, it's not as shocking. I was thinking though, sort of the inverse of that, which is just like sparing everybody the pain of going through your cancer treatment together was a gift in its own way. And he probably did it for himself as well, because he just didn't want to make it like the topic of every conversation he's having and make it the focus of every press thing that he has. And it just, again, there's no right or wrong way, but I thought that was sort of an interesting choice.
Well, I think he was like a true artist too, who didn't want it to influence the work. Like, I think he really did love acting, and he didn't want you to not be immersed into whatever movie he was doing or be a distraction. Like, I had actually just seen, he did a Spike Lee movie called The Five Bloods, and it was kind of a really weird but also awesome movie. And had I known he was had cancer at that time, I think that's all I would be thinking about the whole time.
Which kind of, I guess maybe what I'm getting at is that there couldn't be a more noble guy, it seems like, in the way he just like thought about his role in public life and in the culture, and his respect for the art, the respect for what he did for a living, to be like, no, this is not about me and any personal thing I'm going for. This is about the roles I'm playing, whether that's Jackie Robinson, or any of the characters, James Brown, Marshall. He really also had an amazing knack for choosing, like, or landing at least, incredibly deep, interesting roles as it pertains to Black history too.
Think about what that says about his sort of natural presence and like dignity and power that he embodies. So he can play like, the King of Wakanda. He can play Jackie Robinson. He can play James Brown. These sort of like iconic people. He clearly he has something about him that you just sort of like, by that, and that's probably something that's internal. You can't really teach that. I don't think. You just kind of got to have it inherently. So rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. It's a sad one for sure.
Okay, one more thing I wanted to discuss with you guys. It kind of relates to the cinema and movies. I just saw Tenet twice, actually, in 4 days. I saw it in the theater with Ash and my friend Matt, and then I went to the drive-ins last night with Lauren. And I really liked it. It's very confusing. It's obviously Christopher Nolan's new movie. And I just wanted to know, are you guys going to go see this movie? Because it's the only new movie that's come out in 2020, really, that is of any interest to me. Are you gonna go?
I heard it's too confusing.
Yeah.
Well, that's up to you to know and decide.
Well,
I'd like to see it, but
I guess the question isn't necessarily about the content of the film or the film itself. It's whether you'll go to a theater to see the film is what Max is asking. So,
there's a drive-in option. So
that's true. That's true.
I'm not scared to go to a drive-in. What was the in-theater experience like?
The in-theater experience, well, I saw it at IMAX at Scotiabank in downtown Toronto. It was about a quarter full, but it was actually sold out because that's all the seats that they're selling. It was a little discerning in that I'd look around and I'd say 80% of the people did not have their masks on, even when they weren't like munching on their popcorn or whatever. So if you're concerned about that, just a heads up. I wore my mask the whole time. I did shovel some popcorn into my mouth from time to time, but the mask would come right back on.
Do you take the mask off when you're shoveling, or do you shove it under your chin and slowly put it into your mouth?
No, I just take it off.
Oh.
But the only issue I'd say, and then the drive-in last night is obviously a lot more germ-free because you're in your own surroundings. The only issue is that the movie, I'm not giving anything away here, it has a very harsh mix. When it comes to the sound, it's like very aggressive, and
like you mean harsh mix, that it's not as intentionally, the sound isn't crystal clear.
Yeah, intentionally, like the voices are often like kind of sitting underneath the music, and the soundtrack is like pulsing and very aggressive. So when it's coming through an FM radio dial in your car, it depends if you have a new car. Maybe I'm driving my parents' 2010 Subaru, so like the sound system's a little bit shot. But either way, I think it's going to make it that much harder to hear what's going on or to appreciate the sound mix, because I think as aggressive and as harsh as the sound mix is, it's actually kind of impressive and interesting because most movies aren't mixed like that. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was okay watching it the second time because I'd already seen it before, but I did notice a difference between the movie quality in a theater versus at the drive-in.
Very interesting. Yeah, we have a little side chat of guys in Hamilton, and the question was actually just thrown into that. I know you're in that text group, Maxie. Basically, the guy's saying, "Hey, who wants to do Tenet?" And yeah, I've got to decide whether I'm going to go sit in the theater, or not. But I don't know the answer to that yet.
What are you leaning towards?
I think I'm leaning towards going. I'm very much these days thinking about how to
herd immunity. That's what you're gonna say, right?
Just I'll go in there, lick a couple walls. I feel like, I'm like, as the world opens up, and I'm certainly not a proponent of like, well, the government says we're in this phase, so we can do it. I'm sort of like, as I loosen up sort of like the way that we go about our lives and get back to things, as like offices are opening up and all of that stuff. And I'm sort of like, is this another step for me to go into a theater? You know what I mean? Am I at that step? And I think I'm leaning like, yes, like, at this point, like Winona's back in daycare as well. So like, you're sort of opening yourself up to be part of the wheel that is turning. You know what I mean? I think the sitting,
so
and I know Max,
if you're going to get wet, you might as well go swimming.
But not that crazy. Like I'm not ready to go into a house party. You know what I'm saying? Or like something like that. Like I still don't go into people's houses and stuff, but it's like going to sit in a theater. I don't know. I haven't fully thought about it. The text just came through this morning.
What worries me is I've become friendly with a few Australians, and they have.
We'll stop there.
You're just gonna bury that. Just let that go away.
It's actually worrying my wife.
I got
a
my
lot
headphones
more
on it.
Yeah. No, these Australians are from the former podcast guests. For whatever reason, we seem to have a lot of podcast guests who are Australian. It's a nightmare to book these guests because you got to do it at 8 p.m. and it's 10 a.m. another day when you're talking to them. Point is, they were at this point a couple months ago where all their kids were going back to school. They were completely lifted the lockdown. And now they're just in this terrible state where they have a curfew of 6 p.m. And it all started with everyone going back to school. So my theory is, and I hate to fearmonger, but my worry is what happened in Australia could very much happen here when all the kids go back to school. That's when this thing's really going to amplify. So any risk that's not 100% necessary, I consider it unnecessary. And that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, totally.
Uh,
That's a very fair opinion. And people do warn about the second wave. So it's not just Australians.
It's not just Australians, but if we're using Australia as a metric of a sample size of like similar sized country that went through what we're going through now, but 3 months ago and to where they are now, we can see the horrible consequence of when all the kids went back to school and how quickly it escalates.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the big question. That's, we discussed that New York Times piece. It's like, are parents going to hold their kids out of school? Like, what are the steps? Like, what are, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think most are going to send them back to school. And then unfortunately, I think a lot of the kids are going to be conduits because a lot of children are going to be asymptomatic and pass it along to their parents. And that's really how this thing's going to kind of propagate again.
So what's the avoid tactic then?
Well, just not to mitigate, right? Because I don't think there is an avoid tactic. You just have to do your best and not go out of your way to do anything you think would be unsafe. Like you're not going to avoid your daughter. Your daughter is going to be in contact with a lot of things that you just can't help. So you're going to hug and kiss your daughter, but maybe going to a movie theater might be something I would categorize as unnecessary. That's just the way I feel. I'm not saying I'm right, interesting. And I could very well be wrong. And I'm just basing it off what people have told me.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think that second wave you're talking about is very, very likely. But I think that's just the thing is people try to strategize. It's like, there's no good answers. It's like all these kids are going back to schools or else the parents can't work. It's kind of an insane.
100%. Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very interesting to see, but yeah, we might not avoid that wave. But then I guess that's a good question. Then it's like, yeah, maybe little things like the movie theater aren't necessary, But yeah, I don't know.
You could just chalk it up to like a mental health day.
100%.
By going to the movies. I wonder how far you can push that mental health. Like, Danica, I needed to go to this house party and drink 19 beers. It was a mental health day. I was recommended by medical professionals that mental health.
But it's true. Some people do really need that. You got to weigh the balances in your own mind and decide what's best for you. It's just for me, I'm not dying to go do some things, but some people might be, and I don't cast shame or judgment on them, even though I jokingly say in the next episode that I'm judging you guys for getting haircuts. I'm really not, and I understand all of it.
My wife cut my hair.
Yeah, I know. That's why I feel bad. I'm looking at Mike's haircut and I'm realizing I shouldn't have told him.